Because on Monday staged a peaceful protest against federal government's move to concession 4 major airports in the country. They fear that their interests and that of other citizens will not be protected under the ongoing concession arrangement. But the federal government says aviation workers need not worry, as it only plans to concession the airport terminals and the entire airport. A managing partner, Aglo Aviation Support Services Limited, Tayo Juri, joins me now to talk more on this. Good morning. Thank you for joining us on TVC Breakfast. Now, the government says its intention is to make the sector viable and more efficient in offering services. But from what we are seeing, some of the stakeholders do not see it as such. They believe that this concession is not in their interest. I wonder where you stand and help us better understand what this whole situation is about.
It's known fact, and everybody, both the government, the staff, know we need to improve our infrastructure. We need to improve our brand of airport, create the airport as a hub, improve efficiency and operational seamlessness and facilitation at our airports so that we can grow revenue, we can grow Nigeria as a place of destination of travel. However, the route to achieving this goal is where the problem is. The government has actually decided and announced they are going to actually concession the terminal buildings. The challenge or the question I have about this is, how was this model arrived at? Terminal building, just to be explicit, the airport is split into 3 major parts. There's the air side, there's the terminal building, and there's the land side. So the terminal building is what the government says they're concessioning out to the already concessionaires. Now, how did they arrive at that model? Why just the terminal building? And part of the information given out now is said the air side, there will be SLAs, service level agreements, signed with the concessionaire to provide and ensure they actually take the interest of staff and the airport users into consideration once it's done. With all this said, the challenges then did not, in my opinion, bring all the stakeholders, manage the information with them on how this model was arrived.
Information management is a challenge here.
It's a key factor. Within any concessionaire policy or process, information, and we call it in aviation, it's called aviation collaborative decision making. With the stakeholder management, be able to actually engage all the stakeholders, see how they're involved in this process, see how their concerns are being addressed prior to the concessioning. Because what is the core grievance for this staff is what would happen to our jobs. What would happen, because they've seen it happen with hindsight. Apart from information, the transaction process has actually not been transparent as well. The transaction advisory, the outline business case has not been shared with the major stakeholders. So we do not know what the process would involve. So that's where the challenge is. When there's no communication process, thoroughness, and it actually affects the trust factor. And it affects the engagement of the major stakeholders, which is what we're seeing now, and the grievance being highlighted by this unions.
But the government has said it's insisting that it would go ahead with this concessioning.
Yes.
I wonder what options are available to major stakeholders right now in terms of engaging with government and seeing that whatever decisions are made is in the best interest of staffers of the industry.
Again, it's the transparency platform, engagement and communication. We've seen concessioning happen over and over. It's not a new project. We've seen it happen in different climes across the world. It's for us to take best practice and see what has worked, and we have a template for that.
Really?
Yes, we do have a template. With that template is engaging the stakeholders, ensure that the grievances are actually addressed, and most of all, the framework for the implementation of this concession process is actually highlighted. There's a timeline. There's a project steering committee. Is to actually engage this, with the project steering committee and ensure that all the process from start to finish is visible to all parties, and actually engage them to ensure that their grievances are actually, if not addressed, they are if addressed and actually mitigated.
If we say the terminals is what is being concession, how does that really affect the staffers there?
From the model that the government has actually highlighted, the terminal, like you rightly identified, will be concession. The airside, which will be the landing, the ramp, the runways, will still be in the hands of FAN. And FAN will be the kind of the holding company whereby the terminal is managed by the concessionaire. So the concessionaire will be working along with FAN, providing the services on the air side as well as on the land side. According to what government said again, highlighted, the car park as well as the ramp will be concessioned out. So once you actually have just a measure of a portion of the airport system concessioned out, it actually gives lots of issues. And another factor, which is a key factor, is the hindsight that we've had with the airport concessioning process in Nigeria. That has been a major factor. It's still been a factor that is still in the courts at the moment.
Right.
And a factor with grievance between FAN and the management of MM2. So when we look at these factors, and with that at the back of the mind of the unions, they want a thorough process that all these issues are ironed out and addressed prior to the signing of the concession process.
Now, when it comes to the issues of concession, this is not the first time that it came up, and then there was a disagreement between government and the union workers and other aviation workers. But the general thing there is, from the eyes of those who are just watching, they say that the fear is the fate of the union members, the work, the welfare and all of that after the concession period. Is that what this all disagreement is all about?
No, it's not just that.
Okay.
I'm talking about potential. The Nigerian airport system has potential to be the hub of Africa because we are located just in the heart of Africa, and with connectivity between the north and the south. Having said that, what we need to see is the other question that is on the table and is a huge issue for grievance is what's going to happen to the rest of the 18 airports. We have 22 FAN airports, and we still have other state airports under FAN's management.
Isn't that why government is saying, let us start with these ones?
But why the four that are most commercially viable?
Okay.
It's known that Lagos, for example, gives 70% of the economic viability for the rest of the airports. So when you actually concession the four major viable airports within the Nigerian airport system, what's going to happen to the rest of the 18
Would they rather the government start from the ones that are not...
That is one school of thought. So why not start with those that are actually called secondary airports and are not as commercially viable as the four major ones? Start and see how your model works. And if it's found very viable and commercially driven, then we can actually engage and adopt that system for the rest of the viable airports.
Yeah, but
when
we talk about the issue of private sector coming in, to ensure that business thrives, shouldn't that be a welcome development? Because the four major airports are the larger or the largest employer of labor and all of that. Shouldn't that, so the government can hands off those and then focus on the other ones? I'm
on the same page with you. Okay. Where I agree with that, and I'm sold on the idea of concessioning. So concessioning, we know, would improve infrastructure. It would bring private equity investment into the system. It would drive efficiency. It would actually help increase the passenger throughput as well. There are lots of positives in concessioning. However, what we've seen and what the challenge now is just the process. the transparency and the engagement of those stakeholders within the concessioning process. Once that is warped at this process, at this time, that is where we see where the challenges, these grievances are being highlighted. The idea of concessioning in itself, it's a positive, it's a growth channel, because government, like we had actually highlighted, has a lot of other things to put attention. There's the roads, security, other infrastructure, education needs to be addressed. That's the role and major role of government. Airport should not be, and the growth of airport, we've seen it since 1982. Where we have the privatization process and concessioning process. So it should, and we've seen growth. Yes, there are challenges, is to learn from these challenges, and we actually make sure the lesson learned are well tweeted and given a positive to all those involved.
All right, from your perspective, when we talk about the issue of transparency on the part of government and openness, put these cards on the table, let's see what the issues are. Do you think government is afraid of anything?
I don't think they're afraid of anything, but if they're not afraid of anything, it's the flip side of the coin. If they're not, then it should have actually been engagement. It's according to the process. They said they've engaged the union. They had 2 union members within the steering committee. But over and beyond that, when the outline business case was actually highlighted, why is it not shared with all the stakeholders? Now the request for a proposal is going to be shared. Why we should see that out in the public? Then the quality and the quality and the nature of those involved within the transaction should be highlighted, and it should be highlighted, and they should be of great quality. Okay. Because when you actually have those that have actually tried and tested within the business of concessioning globally, it actually helps. It brings lots of players to the table, and it actually brings lots of investors that are able to actually turn things around. Okay. Other thing, lastly, is the union are looking at the government is actually trying to sell this airport to themselves. That is a huge challenge, and perception is reality. When we're looking at that, but when we have a thorough process, transparent process, we have like a World Bank and IFC, International Financial Corporation, involved in this process, and they actually are large consultancy firms doing this. It's actually going to help us with that transparency issue.
All right. Well, these are some of the fears, like you say. We had one of the union presidents here some time ago, and he was also talking about the issue of transparency. Put the cards on the table. Let's see whatever is there so we know how we can support you and all of that. But let's leave it here now. Thank you so much, Tayo Jiri, for your time on the program.
We hope for the best.
Thank you. We hope for the best, actually.